You know, right now, as you're listening to this, there's a silent war happening inside every single one of your cells. It's this constant, microscopic battle between damage and repair, and it really dictates not just how you feel day to day, but how you age. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that hidden battle.
So let me ask you this. You know what happens to a piece of metal left out in the rain, right? It rusts, it gets weak, it falls apart. Well, what if that exact same kind of process is happening inside your body, right now at a cellular level? What if this cellular rust is one of the main things driving aging and so many diseases? It's a huge idea, and we're about to break down the science behind it. All right, so let's get right into it. If we're going to talk about cellular rust, we first need to identify the culprit. Who's the bad guy here? What's actually causing all this microscopic mayhem? Well, let's meet the tiny agents of chaos at the heart of the story.
They have a name, reactive oxygen species, or just ROS for short. Now, don't think of these as some kind of foreign invader. They're not. In fact, they're a totally normal, unavoidable part of just being alive. Think of it like this. Every time your cells make energy from the food you eat, it's like a tiny power plant. And every power plant creates a little bit of exhaust. Well, for your cells, that exhaust is ROS.
Now, this is really important to understand. Look at this diagram. You see, ROS generation is a normal internal thing, but look at all the stuff that can feed into it from the outside. We're talking about things like too much sun, pollution, inflammation. All these external stressors can hit the accelerator and just crank up the production of ROS, totally overwhelming our body's natural defenses.
So what's the big deal? Why should we care? Well, these ROS molecules are incredibly unstable. They're like little live wires bouncing around, desperate to react with something. And their favorite targets? The absolute workhorses of our cells, our proteins. Proteins are the tiny machines that do, well, pretty much everything. And when they get attacked, things start to break down.
So a protein gets zapped by one of these ROS molecules. What happens next? Well, as we're about to see, it kicks off this incredible cellular drama of damage and our body's amazing systems for either repair or, if that fails, recycling.
This is such a great way to picture it. On the left, you've got a healthy protein. It's like a perfect little piece of origami folded into a precise shape so it can do its job. But then, on the right, you see what happens after it gets rusted. It completely loses that shape. It becomes misfolded. It can't do its job anymore. And worse, it gets sticky and starts clumping up with other broken proteins, causing all kinds of cellular traffic jams.
Let's put a face to the name to make this real. This is a protein called calmodulin. It's absolutely crucial for letting your cells talk to each other. Its shape is everything. Now, see those little dots? Those highlight specific spots called methionine residues. You can think of those as calmodulin's Achilles heel. They're the parts that are super vulnerable to getting rusted.
So here's the kicker. When those weak spots get hit by ROS and oxidize, calmodulin's whole shape gets bent out of whack. And because of that, it can no longer connect with the other molecules it's supposed to. It's like having the key to your house, but then someone bends it. It's useless, right? It doesn't fit the lock anymore. Its function is just shut down.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Look, here are these scientific receipts. These are lab gels. See that dark band up top? That shows that healthy calmodulin is successfully binding to its partner. It's working. But then look at the other lanes, the ones with the oxidized, rusted calmodulin. Poof, that connection is gone. It's clear as day, visual proof that the rust breaks the machine.
But our bodies are amazing, right? Our cells don't just take this lying down. They had this really sophisticated two-step plan. Step 1, call in the repair crew. You've got these enzymes. MSRA and MSRB are their names, that can actually come in and fix some of this rust, especially on those methionine spots we just saw. But if the damage is just too bad, the protein is beyond saving, then it's time for step 2. The cell calls in the cleanup crew, a machine called the proteasome, which basically shreds the broken protein and recycles the parts.
Okay, so you've got this constant back and forth happening all the time. Damage, repair, damage, repair. It's a biological tug-of-war. But what happens when one side starts to lose? What happens when the damage starts to overwhelm the repair crew? Well, that's the tipping point. That's when the rust starts to take over.
And this right here is the central idea of this whole explainer. It all comes down to a simple balance. When the speed of the rusting is faster than the speed of the repair and cleanup crews, that damaged junk starts to pile up. And that accumulation of cellular garbage, well, that's directly linked to the aging process and a whole host of chronic diseases.
Let's trace this out, because it's a really nasty domino effect.
You can see how immune cells produce ROS, which then leads to more oxidized proteins. But look what happens next. Those rusted proteins, also called AOPP, then trigger more immune cells. It creates this dangerous, vicious cycle of chronic inflammation that just feeds on itself and ultimately leads to real tissue damage.
And we're not talking about some abstract lab concept. This buildup of cellular rust is tied to some of the biggest health challenges we face. We're talking about the aging process itself, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, even things like cataracts and arthritis. The list goes on and on.
Okay, so that all sounds a little grim, right? It seems pretty serious, which of course leads to the big question everyone's thinking. If the cellular rust is so fundamental to aging and disease, is there anything we can actually do to fight back?
Well, before you can fight something, you have to be able to see it, to measure it. But think about it. This is all happening at a totally invisible molecular level. So how on earth do scientists measure the amount of rust in someone's body?
They use something called biomarkers. You can think of them as molecular footprints, little clues left behind by the damage. So for instance, as you can see here, they can measure something called protein carbonyls, which is a pretty good general indicator of how much rust is in the system. Or they can track that AOPP stuff we just saw in the inflammation cycle. These are the tools that let researchers put a real number on it. And of course, the moment we can measure something, it leads us to the million-dollar question. What about antioxidants? You know, the stuff in blueberries, green tea, all that. Can we just load up on those to help our bodies neutralize all this rust before it even starts? All right, you might want to sit down for this, because the answer isn't as simple as we all hoped. It's really, really complex. Sure, some studies show that taking vitamin C and E for a long time might help reduce some of the damage, but then other studies on different supplements like grapeseed extract show absolutely no effect. It's inconsistent. And get this is the wild part. Some research even suggests that flooding your system with too many antioxidants could actually mess with your body's own natural defense signals.
So, what's the bottom line? Well, the honest answer is we're still figuring it out. The science is really promising, but it's very much a work in progress. I mean, listen to what the researchers themselves are saying in this quote here. We just need more controlled studies before we can make any big claims. Which really brings us to the final and maybe most important thought. Maybe the goal isn't to completely eliminate this cellular rust. After all, it's a natural byproduct of just living. The real frontier, the ultimate question that's driving all this research, is can we learn to manage it? Can we one day learn to fine-tune that delicate balance between damage and repair to finally tip the scales back in our favor, and in doing so, maybe, just maybe, slow down the clock on aging and disease itself?